this is my review of Mob Psycho 100. Okay, so this episode is where the plot starts to thicken. So the main plot, this episode is mainly adds a major plot to the story, which is interesting. I'll explain it a bit, but anyway, Teru, realizing that Ritsu has been going around using Mob's name, goes to get Mob as reinforcements and tells him what's going on and escorts him to where Ritsu is. But once after realizing that the two are brothers, he leaves, realizing that he probably shouldn't be involved in an argument between brothers. So after Mob shows up, he's initially excited about the fact that Ritsu now has psychic powers and is proud of him because he focused and did it and finally has psychic powers. But Ritsu points out that the main reason he had psychic powers was because the main reason he tried to get psychic powers was because he believes that he admired his brother, which he does, but now he believes that it wasn't so much admiration as it was fear, because his brother is the most powerful Esper in the entire series, and notably that had Ritsu a little bit terrified, because if Mob and Ritsu got into an argument, Ritsu would have no way to defend himself, and Mob decided to use his psychic powers against Ritsu. Something that Mob has put in place by having a rule that prevents him from attacking Espers. But Ritsu doesn't know that, and develops psychic powers in order to protect himself. And since Mob has a rule against other people, it was mainly a lack of communication that caused that misunderstanding. And Mob, hearing what Ritsu has to say, decides to do the brotherly thing and look after him, even though his brother quite clearly doesn't want him to anymore. And then apologizes to all of the thugs that Ritsu beat up. Very, very adamantly, might I add, so that he in order to try and end the animosity between Ritsu, Mob, and all the thugs that he beat up. However, unbeknownst to anybody at the scene, there's actually a guy watching them who is actually working with another guy who was broken into the Awakening Lab and has kidnapped the kids there. And it's clear that they're not nice people. And it's clear that his intention is to kidnap Ritsu, believing him to be Mob. So the Esper leaps in, tries to kidnap Ritsu, pointing out that that he's on a completely different level than the thugs, and that he's removing him from the playing field by kidnapping him so that the thugs can continue to squabble over petty things. At which point Mob steps in and gets his head handed to him slightly, but is mostly fine. At which point the Esper tries to leave with Ritsu tucked under his arm and tells the rest of the thugs to grovel at his feet and puts them in their place, pretty much. But unfortunately, before he can leave, Mob fully recovers from getting his head bashed in and faces off against the Esper. And the Esper is powerful and is easily kicking Mob's ass left and right. So Ritsu tries to reason with the Esper, telling him that they shouldn't fight and that he should just leave with him, since that's what the Esper came for. But the Esper wants to make Ritsu suffer a little bit because he doesn't play fair by the rules, as he puts it, and then punches Ritsu in the face to wipe the determined look off of his face in order to protect his brother. Because at this point, Ritsu has started to realize that his admiration for his brother may go a bit deeper than he originally thought, and is starting to realize that what he said wasn't entirely true. And Mob, upon seeing Ritsu getting beat up, goes full 100% mode, and from that point onward, the fight between the Esper and Mob goes completely differently, with Mob effortlessly kicking the guy's ass left and right and sending him crashing into buildings. And eventually the Esper realizes they can't win against him, and during the fight, it's revealed the thugs realize that Mob is in fact White Tea Poison rather than White Tea Poison's older brother, realizing that he and realizing that he is in fact White Tea Poison, the shadow leader of Salt Middle School. And from that point on begin cheering for the guy to actually beat the Esper up. At which point the Esper pretends to pull out a knife to attack him, but it's actually a spray designed to knock people out that he can't deal with. But then because of that, Mob actually gets up unconscious, but now triple question mark has come out to play, and the Esper, realizing that he still can't win, grabs Ritsu and tails it out of there. And the thugs thank Mob before realizing that he's unconscious. Meanwhile, Dimple, who has been silently observing this whole time and actually left and came back, decides to get Teru as backup, but realizes that they showed up way too late and were unable to help. And the best thing they can do is just escort Mob back to Teru's apartment. At which point Mob realizes that Ritsu did indeed live in fear of him just a little bit, and actually did go out of his way to keep his distance, even though he did try to come and help his brother. And Mob finally realizes this before waking up, at which point he's greeted by Teru and Dimple, and Teru reveals that he actually knows the guys who took his brother, and reveals that it's actually a shadowy organization of Espers called Claw, whose entire MO is to collapse the world government and make Espers reign supreme across the entire world. So, yeah, they're not nice people, and they have even shadier business practices on top of that. Having, as I said, abducting young Espers, and then also apparently brainwashing them to turn them into soldiers. So, and Mob, despite hearing all of this and knowing full well the risks of what happens if he fails, mainly being that he'll be dead, decides to go anyway and tries to figure out how they found out about his brother. At which point, Dimple realizes that they probably got the information from the Awakening Lab, because he realizes that they probably went to the Awakening Lab first to get info on Shigeo, and they go there, at which point they realize that Ritsu was kidnapped due to a misunderstanding, and he was mistaken for Mob, and while also revealing themselves to have psychic powers in the first place. So Reagan is slightly aware of what's going on. He doesn't know the full story about what's going on, but he does realize that Mob hasn't come to work for the first time in ever, and apparently is concerned for his well-being, and is now going to go find him and figure out what's going on. So yeah, this is where the plot starts to thicken. So they introduce Claw, which is a major antagonist for the series. It's not the main antagonist, but it is a major one. I think it appears predominantly in at the ends of season 1 and 2, although they're not entirely important to the story up until that point. But they do appear as significant antagonists. So yeah, Claw's interesting because it's essentially a whole group of Espers with different powers and abilities, and we get to meet all the different members as they go through. And we also find out that their main facility, where they bring Ritsu and the others, is actually deep in the woods, and exactly where in the woods is unknown, but they'll probably figure that out next episode. Actually, they do figure that out next episode, but I'm not going to spoil that. But yeah, if you guys have seen this episode of Mob Psycho 100, what did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also, check out my Patreon description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month, and it really helps me out, so I would definitely appreciate it if you did that. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace!